Hey guys, it's BlockchainBrad, and today we're talking about all things Elrond. That's right, we have the CEO and the lead researcher in the house to discuss this further. Thank you very much to Ben and Adrian for being on the channel today.
Hey guys,
Hi.
glad to have this discussion with you.
So we'll introduce you both in a moment with your backgrounds and your experience. We have the CEO, as I said, to the right, and we have Adrian to the left. Now, let's explore this a little bit in terms of title. Now, you're known as a highly scalable public blockchain, and more specifically, you're all about state channel, state sharding, in fact, and with regard to revolutionizing the concepts and the constructs to make it a state sharded architecture. Now that's a lot to explore, so let's firstly start with you as the CEO, Ben. Tell us about yourself and why you are well positioned to lead Elrond.
Sure. So there's a few things to tell about myself. First of all, I think I stumbled into Bitcoin sometime in 2013, and I was extremely intrigued by the technology and economics of it. And so the first and most important thing I thought back then was that I should really get involved with one of the projects and not just stop at reading things. So in 2014, I joined the NEM core team and led the business, marketing, and community efforts. I also had some discussion regarding the product and features and really core things that NEM was doing at the time. Mm-hmm. So this was a very, very rewarding experience through which I've learned a lot of lessons. And then after some time, after I departed from NEM, I started to replicate some of the things I learned there, namely how to take a project and really invest value and bootstrap it from a mere Bitcoin talk post to $1 billion project.
Okay, now I'm going to stop you there for a moment because obviously you're being very transparent. You're literally telling us that you're an entrepreneur. You're telling us that you have a lot of business savvy and you know exactly what the mechanics are to build something from the ground up in blockchain. So thank you for telling us straight up how your brain operates. Now let's move across now to someone who is in the research field, because obviously you need that. You need someone who knows what they're talking about when it comes to complex tech. So talk us through this, Adrian. What's your background and why can you step up to the plate and help out with the Elrond team?
To introduce myself, I'm Adrian. I've studied computer science. I have a bachelor in computer science and also a master in advanced computing systems. For the past 10 years, I've worked in some big companies as a software developer, for example, in Intel or in ST Ericsson, and also for some companies indirectly for Samsung, Apple, and so on. Mm-hmm. I'm always interested in tech and all the cutting edge of technology, all technology has to offer us nowadays. Just a slight clarification. I'm in charge of technical stuff. We also have researchers here. I'm also in development, architecture, and also contribute sometimes to research with the others here.
Let me clarify that. I do apologize. I realized I said that. Now you are a lead technologist. You are also lead technician. Yeah. You have technological skills, and you are aware of the fundamentals of blockchain. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Correct.
Okay, so your background in terms of schooling, your academics, you are an engineer?
Yes.
Okay, and that is important because if you're going to lead technically, you need that experience. So thanks for clarifying that. Now let's move across now to some of the terms because we need to get down into the business of your fundamentals and what you stand for that separates you from others. Now you claim that you are an adaptive state sharding system and you're different to everything else. Tell me exactly why, Adrian.
So as you've seen now in the space, there are lots of blockchains which implement sharding. But mostly they use some static sharding, static mechanism. We use adaptive state sharding because this blockchain is a living organism, to call it like this, you always have nodes joining or leaving the network, and you cannot have a static scheme for something that's moving dynamically. So you need to adapt depending on what the conditions in the network are. So this is mainly why we chose an adaptive state sharding. What it means, it's one, we adapt the number of shards with the nodes that are joining or leaving the network. So we have a scheme where each shard has a minimum number of nodes, and whenever that threshold is, whenever the nodes fall below a threshold, then we decide to rearrange the network.
Okay, so I want to ask you now, obviously that's something that's going to take some time to really build out. What is the state of your state sharding right now in terms of its efficiency, its efficacy, and basically its functionality?
Yeah, so we have worked on our prototype. We already have a rudimentary implementation of state sharding. We have cross-shard transactions and also the state sharding. Actually, we do transaction sharding, data sharding, network sharding. Right now, we are in a point where we want to move from the static. So we started with a static sharding, but now we are moving towards the adaptive, as we mentioned in the paper. What we've analyzed in the white paper is that the throughput of our network with around 60 shards will reach the 10,000 transactions per second, which is our target right now. But of course, we plan to go beyond that. But right now, this is our first target.
I see. So how much of that is actually functioning though in your prototype right now that you're testing in-house? Because I understand that it's still very privatized. How much is actually operating for real? And tell us the exact numbers.
Okay, the numbers right now, we've reached above 1,000. I think it was 1,400 transactions per second with 10 shards. But yeah, this is the early stages. It's going according to plan.
I would say that it's really important to put this in perspective. So we released a really technical proof of concept, which is open there and just important to be out there for critical discussion and feedback. Sure. And then we have moved forward to release the prototype to validate some of the core hypotheses. And with the current version we have already validated the hypothesis that we can do cross-shard transactions. On the one hand, we have implemented a communication layer, a kind of cryptographic layer, and all this kind of basic things that you need as a backbone for a network to function. And from this point forward, we are right now focusing to stabilize the prototype and add more complexity to it.
Sure. Well, Ben, obviously you're the CEO, so I want to ask you this question because surely you would know some of the fundamental technological questions, or the answers rather. Tell me a bit about your consensus mechanism. You call it the secure proof of stake, extending beyond the proof of stake we know of. Tell us why you did that and what it actually means for your whole project.
Right. I think there's two aspects to this. On the one hand, it was really important for us to eliminate the energy and computational problem that seems to be really unsustainable with proof-of-work architectures. And this is only a discussion that happens when you have a better alternative. If proof-of-work was the only thing we would have, then we would always focus on improving the proof-of-work to consume a bit less energy and be a bit more optimized. But since we have proof of stake, we have focused on making sure that this eliminates the elephant in the room and makes the whole discussion sustainable on the one hand, and then critically makes it secure. And then we have, to make it secure, we have added a random function through which we select the consensus group, and then you basically do not know who will be in the consensus group until it happens. And then as soon as the consensus group is chosen, you basically have only 4 seconds to know who is in the consensus group, and then afterwards the consensus group changes after the 4 seconds which have been mentioned.
Sure.
And then
Now, sorry to interrupt you. I just want to move across now to Adrian about that 4 seconds. Now, Adrian, let's get real about some of the concerns about that 4 second period of time. What happens if people can jump in within that 4 second period to act maliciously? What are you guys doing to prevent some of those risks?
Yeah, so this time frame of 4 seconds is an initial estimate. We might change it to 5 seconds or adapt it, but not slightly, depending on how the testnet actually performs. Yes, so we mentioned that during those 4 seconds, let's say a malicious attacker tries to do something. What it can do, it stall, for example, the consensus. It can try to bribe. Of course, there's the discussion if 4 seconds is enough to bribe someone.
Right. Well, that's why I'm asking you, because we want to know that from you.
Yeah, from our analysis, 4 seconds is not enough to bribe someone. We've looked at some other approaches, and some of them are using 1 entire day for the same consensus. So compared to that, our time frame is much lower. Of course, if you have a really highly adaptive attacker, he might try to, for example, launch a DDoS on some of the nodes. But of course, to mount a DDoS on those nodes, you would need more than this.
Sure. I think you've answered it clearly enough. At the moment, it's quite experimental at this stage, but from your findings so far, you're good to go, based on your testing. Now, let's talk about the Nash equilibrium that, you refer to that in your white paper with the scalability, the security, and the decentralization. You claim that you're going to try and address these 3 collectively. But again, as Ben's been saying previously, you want to be a more efficient architecture. And that's something that's really commonplace. Everything since the first Nakamoto protocol, everyone's trying to do that. So that's nothing new. But what are you guys doing to bring the 3 together to address them all?
Yeah, so this is addressed actually through using our sharding and our secure proof of stake. Sharding for scalability, secure proof of stake also for scalability and security. We have this sharding, because it's a state sharding, it's not just transaction sharding. It allows us to scale the network to a global level.
Can you talk us through that, the distinction between the transaction sharding and the state sharding? Like really go into that clearly.
Yeah, so here it depends on, we have several points, right? We have the network sharding, which deals with who actually processes stuff in the network. So we have shards, each shard containing a number of nodes which do the processing in that specific shard. Then you have the transaction sharding, so what is being processed. This is parallelized between each different shard, so each shard deals with a different transaction or different set of transactions. So these are going in parallel. This is why you have a higher throughput with the addition of new shards. And also you have data sharding, meaning that the data is, so not the entire data in the system is not kept in every single shard. You have a specific chunk of data which is managed and stored in one shard, in the nodes in one shard, and then you have different data which is stored in a different shard. This was a main problem with transaction sharding because you scale the throughput, so you have a large number of transactions per second, and also this means that your blockchain, if you have a single blockchain and you do not have a state data sharding, you have a single blockchain. So your blockchain will grow very fast if you have lots of transactions per second. That means that data to store it in each node or to have full nodes for that is really unsustainable when you have a high throughput.
And to just interrupt you for a moment, you do redress some of these concerns. I have read about your storage comments in your white paper, but I really want to talk to you now about two terms we hear a lot of, and that is you mentioned the vertical issue with a single blockchain operation, and that can be inherently problematic, and we know that from the very first iterations of blockchain. But then there's references consistently now about horizontal scaling. We talk about things like side chains and other nomenclature that refers to that. But I want to talk more about the distinctions of sharding, the typologies we see in the space. We see all kinds, right from Zilliqa to OmniLedger, references to different mechanisms that address this concern. Can you please tell us exactly why your approach, being a non-vertical blockchain approach, is better than some of the other ways that we see sharding happen?
I would say there's two key things to this. On the one hand, we can go and discuss the state of the art. So one of the really major advances in the field has been the research done by the guys who proposed OmniLedger, the OmniLedger paper.
Okay.
And we have been in several discussions with some of them. And the important note there is to understand what the state sharding scheme solves.
Right.
So you usually want to have state sharding in order to have a network of smaller networks that can allow you to process things in parallel. And the important part then is the difference, what happens after this, because most people understand this basic thing, but then here comes the difference. Most of the projects try to tackle this from the most low-hanging fruit, right? Which would be transaction sharding. They just dispose the transaction in different shards, but everything else remains as a single blockchain.
So just to ask you there, Ben, who is doing that? Are you saying that OmniLedger's focus is doing that? Or which of the previous one? Okay, let's be clear on that so we know.
Right. OmniLedger proposes a genuine state sharding scheme. And the difference within OmniLedger and Elrond is that Elrond moves one step beyond what OmniLedger does and complements the mechanism OmniLedger proposed and says, okay, everything is quite well thought, but the most important part for us is to understand that this is a dynamic system and not a static system. And then we also add the secure proof of stake part, which is different to what OmniLedger proposed. But in the space, there are other projects which have come with various efforts. One of them is Zilliqa, where we appreciate the efforts and the contribution they have brought. And they have been focusing on transaction sharding. As I said, OmniLedger has proposed a kind of state sharding scheme. But for Elrond, it's really important to have not only state sharding, but adaptive state sharding with a number of nodes that are always changing depending, and the number of shards which are changing depending on the nodes that are present in the network.
I see. You've made it really clear, and I think I now understand. When you refer to adaptive, you're referring to dynamic specifically. No longer are you static, and you're also embedding in transactional sharding as another capacity inside your design. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, Adrian, did you want to keep going on that?
I wanted to just one other point. When you do a static sharding, then you define the number of shards. So if you stay within that number of shards, you cannot scale beyond that.
Right, okay, I see. So you're not limited by your design in yours because it's not finite. Now let's go on and let's talk about your the smart contracts themselves, because we understand them from a vertical perspective. We know how they operate with Ethereum, for example. But tell us a bit about your plan and the kind of examples you'd need in order to function as a smart contract system on a new architecture.
So what we are planning to do, we really appreciate that Ethereum is the largest ecosystem in this area, and this is why we're also trying to make use of that and have the integration of, for example, smart contracts in Ethereum seamlessly done on Elrond. This is why we are planning to have some implementation of our own VM, which does the abstractization of our layer and have the smart contracts in Ethereum run seamlessly in our architecture as well.
Let's explore that a little bit more. Let's unpack that. Now, you talked about a layer. Now, are you doing your own VM, or are you going to be interoperable with the EVM, with Ethereum's virtual machine?
We are planning to do our own VM, but this will keep compliance with EVM smart contracts as well.
Okay, can you talk us through that a little bit more in terms of where you're at in that design? Because creating a virtual machine is a very arduous process, as you'd appreciate. Where are you at in doing that, or is that more theoretical at this stage of Elrond?
So I think there's two discussions here. On the one hand, we have a kind of proposed mechanism to doing everything, which has been proposed with the paper, but we have made some advances there and are focusing on two key things. On the one hand, as Adrian said, we want to maintain the EVM compliance, but then on the other hand, we also want to integrate another layer which goes into the EWASP compliance part.
Right, I see. So first and foremost, you're focused on being compliant with Ethereum so that you can have the interoperability. Okay, so that makes sense. Now, can you talk us through some of the examples? Because in your notes, in your white paper, you reference things like atomics as an example, or SBAC as another. Can you tell us why you reference them as unique smart contract possibilities?
Yeah, that was actually mentioned as a starting point. From that, it was still in our research period. Yeah, that was a good starting point with ChainSpace and how they're doing stuff.
Right.
But we are planning to developing our own mechanism, and yeah, this is one of the directions. But we're also exploring others without needing to lock things in multiple shards or doing this kind of things.
Okay.
So I would clarify there a bit. The important discussion there was that we wanted to focus on what the state of the art is in state sharded smart contract architectures.
Sure.
So there's a really big difference between a normal architecture running smart contracts, having a VM, and then a state sharding architecture which wants to have its VM and run smart contracts. The difficulty of the problem is really, really high. And since our whole focus has been at first on having state sharding running and secure proof of stake running, then we have said, okay, this is the important part to have the things ready here. And then we can much easily implement the kind of theory we have already proposed.
Right.
But the important part is to have the core layer ready first.
Well, let's talk about that in the context of Vitalik. Now, obviously, he's an important member of the blockchain community, but he obviously designed or was a co-member of the design of Ethereum. Now, he's been referenced commenting on sharding specifically. Can you please talk us through that? No doubt you're aware of some of his concerns about Ethereum itself, and he is a proponent also of state sharding. So, do either of you know of that? And if you do, can you comment on that?
Right. I think there's two things here that we could say. On the one hand, we have one of the guys that is working on the state sharding implementation of Ethereum, who is an advisor to Elrond on the technical side. And we have been in very frequent conversations about what they are trying to do, how we are approaching things, and trying to continuously find holes and find things into what we thought would initially work and try to improve this through a continuous process.
Right.
But we are well aware that implementation of sharding on Ethereum is quite similar to what Elrond intends to implement on the one hand, with the exception that we want to have the adaptive state sharding scheme.
I see. It's once again that dynamic approach.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a quite interesting discussion that Vitalik had about 3 or 4 weeks ago, where he was asked how he would design Ethereum if he were to build things from scratch today. And it was funny and also interesting to see that he said if he would start building things today, he would start directly with proof of stake and state sharding.
I see.
He would not.
I'll have to dig up that that reference. Obviously, I can't comment on that, but it seems quite apt for you that it is adaptive in this sense, in that reference. Now, if we can talk to you, Adrian, for a moment, can you talk us through epochs and rounds? What those two terms mean in terms of the context of Elrond's tech?
Yeah. So this is the chronology of Elrond. We designed it to have these rounds about 4 seconds long when we want to choose a different consensus in each round and propose a block. So basically, in each round, we would have a block proposed by a different consensus group. Now, multiple such rounds form an epoch. And we use this epoch to do also node reshuffling between shards. This is in order to increase security and avoid forming collusion between shards.
Is that because it randomizes it as well?
Yes, it's also randomized, but if you have the same nodes doing work in the same shard, considering that the nodes per shard are a lower number than the nodes per the entire network, then it would be possible to form some collusion groups inside the shard. So this shuffling of nodes between shards needs to be done in order to decrease that probability to a minimum. The reason why we do this every epoch, so for us, first we mentioned one epoch would be 1 day, so 24 hours. Now we're considering of decreasing that time and have an epoch at, for example, every 4 hours.
Right.
Yeah, so this is needed, as I mentioned, is needed to keep the security inside the shards. But also we are planning to use this epoch to give some rewards and compute also the rating of validators.
Okay, now I want to talk to you a little bit more on that as well. We'll talk about the users and the eligible validators and the process of incentivization, but I want to directly ask you, either of you, perhaps Ben, you could jump in here. Now, we've talked a bit about the implications of having high throughput and what you're doing to address that, but let's talk about low latency as well. What are you doing to reduce latency so that you maximize the effect of your design?
Right. So I do think that an important fact of this is the communication layer that we are trying to build and trying to have a kind of communication layer that is really fast and efficient. We've been benchmarking and trying to optimize with different iterations here, but on the one hand, I think. Yeah, on the one hand, I think this is really going as planned. And on the other, we find that we can constantly have tweaks and optimization. Since this is in the very early stages, I do see that we can maintain a very low latency.
Yeah, one other point here, for example, is the way we're choosing the consensus group. Because in some architectures, for example, choosing a consensus group takes a lot of time. Therefore, our let's say compromise with those 4 seconds per round of time when the group is exposed. So you know during those 4 seconds who the consensus group is. But designing it this way allows us to decrease the choosing of the consensus group to up to 100 milliseconds, which is a lot faster than in other architectures.
I see. Okay.
So this has a high. This causes a high improvement on our latency.
Okay, well, thank you for explaining that. Now, let's talk about Algorand, because it is referenced also in your paper. And for those who don't know, it's certainly worth a read of their very, very complex design. Now, you reference the random selection mechanisms, but you argue that you're doing something even better. So can you tell us why you decided to reference them in your white paper?
Yeah, actually, it's the idea of randomly choosing who validates and who proposes blocks inside the shard, for example. Their approach was the VRF.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it gives a higher degree of security, because you don't know who the actual validators or proposers are until they tell you that they are, and they give you the proof. But in our case, we at the beginning of the round we know who the validators are, but only at that point we get to know who the validators are for that specific round. And this gives you, for example, of an attacked vector, because you know who it is. But we argue that the time frame is low enough so that nothing
non-trivial
yeah,
can
non-trivial.
happen.
Yeah.
But I would clarify there that this is not better or worse.
Yeah.
It's a kind of trade-off we make as an optimization. So we want to make sure that ours is a much more scalable and, as you mentioned before, low latency architecture that works through. On the other hand, Algorand would optimize in their case
Security.
Through the VRF. Would
I see.
optimize
So essentially, we're talking about trade-offs here, gentlemen. You're saying that you have a different trade-offs in order to achieve your ideals, and they have something else, right? Okay. Well, that makes sense. Now, let's talk about storage, Adrian. You mentioned this before. What are you doing in your bootstrapping approach? What are you doing to ensure that there's storage factored in to the overall architecture?
Okay, if I understood correctly, our storage is per shard. Each shard has its own data it manages, so its own blockchain.
the pruning part.
Yeah, and also we have the pruning. This means that we always keep one epoch behind of history, what happened, but the previous data we can dispose of and have this sort of checkpoints. Which we use as for the new nodes who join the network to start bootstrapping, start synchronizing.
So that's a way, the pruning that Ben mentioned, that's a way of creating a much more efficient system because you're getting rid of excess data.
Yeah, exactly. We also have we would have also some full nodes, for example, per shard to have the whole history, but this is not needed for a normal validator.
Right, okay.
It's not...
Okay, now let's talk about scalability. Now that's a constant problem. Are you confident in your approach that you feel like that you are addressing this satisfactorily, or you know, even in the very lay sense, are you addressing this fundamentally so that you can move forward?
Yeah, so I think this is a really core problem that Elrond addresses, and there's multiple solutions that have been proposed to the scalability problem. Some of them have to do with off-chain solutions, which do not tackle the heart of the problem per se. But what we are trying to do is to reason for the long run and come up with a solution that does not provide anything incremental, but rather solves the solution. Once you have the state charting approach working that we are implementing, then scalability will become a trivial issue. You will have it and will have to look at the next problem if you want to solve it. And the important part with the state charting approach is that you basically have a linear scalability as you add more shards to the network.
Sure.
So it's not like when you reach the 60 shards we mentioned and you have the 10,000 transactions per second that you all of a sudden stop there. It's quite the contrary. We intend to optimize quite beyond that point. And if we have much more nodes in the network, joining the network, and we have more shards than what we approximated as a starting point for 10,000 transactions per second target, then we'll easily exceed that.
Okay, now let's talk about the reference of on-chain then, because Ben, you referenced off-chain. Now we have seen some off-chain design specifically with regard to sharding. So Adrian, I want to ask you this. Is the Elrond system focused on an on-chain, or is it focused on both? What's the fundamental premise?
Yeah, it's we are focusing on chain right now. Yeah.
All right. Now let's talk.
I would also just complement the answer. The idea is that this is the critical problem, the crucial problem that has to be solved. There's multiple solutions that can be easily added to Elrond if we solve this as an off-chain solution.
All right.
So we consider this a kind of not either or, but we are focused on solving this, and then we will be easily able to either communicate or work.
It sounds like an illusion to me. So, and I don't mean illusion, I mean illusion. So on that note, let's ask the question, are you currently talking with off-chain sharding solutions right now as compatible entities that you could partner with?
Yes, we are talking with at least one partner that intends to have something working on the off-chain channel.
Who?
And pardon me?
Who?
We are not at this point able to disclose this, but they are a really important player in the space that is trying to do something. We have also even gone further and discussed some solution for Elrond to implement something that would be compatible to what these guys are doing.
There are not many off-chain, highly successful sharding entities out there, so I don't think it will be very difficult to work out some of the ones that perhaps would be competitors for this kind of this relationship that you're talking about. So it will be interesting to see what name does come up as you disclose it. Now let's talk about some of the technical trials, some of the tribulations perhaps you've gone through. Now my understanding is that you have done trials. Have there been crashes? Have there been problems? Have there been any issues? Are you running very few nodes and very few shards on those nodes right now?
There's really an important part of our work is to have this kind of issues discovered. It's no question if there are or are not issues. There are lots of issues, but the important part for us is to go through them, to discover the most important issues, solve them, learn from them. And at this point, I think our last task has been with 10 shard and 60 nodes. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go through this number. So 10 shards, 60 nodes, that's still quite low for what your plan is for. How are you feeling in terms of me saying that even? That I'm saying that that's quite low?
Yeah, this is just the prototype. We wanted to verify some of our assumptions, this is actually the starting point for us. The main, let's say, tribulation will be in the test chain, where we plan to, of course, have a reasonable number of nodes and shards to validate.
Yeah, and also I think there's an important note to underscore here. Most of the projects that are trying to build something, they easily just create a fork, add some optimization to what has been already built, and then move with that part. What we have done is we have started from scratch, really from scratch, implemented everything for our own, have tested this. And this, we have never proposed this as a testnet. So this is the first version of the prototype where we present something we have done before raising anything, and just to have a kind of constructive feedback.
Right, well, let's talk about that. I'm really glad that you basically proposed that scenario, because you've had to do that. You've had to go to capital firms that have the money. You've had to present this to try and build out the beginnings of your ICO through seed investment. So what's the response been when you have presented this very nascent technology, these prototypes, and you've obviously showed the very crude versions when they're just starting to begin? What's their feedback?
I think the feedback has been quite positive. We know, and we have, as I said, presented this as a very early stage implementation and core validation of some of our core hypotheses, and as a work in progress. So as we talked, from one week to another, we continue to add several layers of complexity. And there's an important note here, I think, just to correct what you said before. So we have not raised any kind of seed round until this point. We have just made sure we want to execute And this is the point where we have been starting to discuss with some of the interesting funds or interesting people in the space with which we want to partner.
So are you saying, Ben, that you haven't raised any seed capital yet? You're not seeking to do that yet, or you're about to?
So we are about to. We are in discussion with some of the really interesting people in the field, and we have, as I said, received some very useful feedback. But we are just about to start this pending the legal approval we have to receive.
Okay, now let's explore that a little bit more. Now, the SEC is also, part and parcel with some of the complexity. Who can participate in your ICO as you evolve into that space, and what is the plan overall in terms of investment as well?
Right. So we have intentionally not made any information regarding this public because we wanted the conversation to focus on the technology part and just have a reasonable discussion about features, potential problems, and some feedback from the community. And the important note here is that we are, as you may know, incorporated in Switzerland, Zug. And so we have made sure to be compliant with regulations, and this has also prevented us in making the information public. But I can tell the following things. So in principle, we intend to go against the madness and insanity you see in the space right now, where projects just starting out are raising things at valuations of billions of dollars. And we will intentionally limit our raise and will offer a really reasonable amount of tokens. And the important note, again, will be that we will focus on the kind of partners that are interested in Elrond for the long run.
Okay, and I'm glad you said that you are going to be focused on the long term, because we don't hear that discussion enough. For reasons of transparency and for the need of this industry to continue. But I want to really get down into this argument of transparency, quite simply. Now, you say that you're not prepared to disclose your token metrics. Now, to me, that's not transparent. So can you please tell the community why you're not being transparent exactly about your token metrics?
It has not been a question of transparency for us. It has just been a question. So I do say that we intend. So I can just give some ballpark figures.
But can you tell us why, though, Ben? Why are you not telling us?
Right. So the whole discussion is that at this point, we are, due to legal reasons, normally not allowed to make this information public until it's clarified from our lawyers in Switzerland that this is allowed, and it's allowed to be made public in certain jurisdictions, and it should not be taken as any kind of security offering or breach with respect to other
So Ben, once you clarify those legal hurdles, once you overcome them, are you going to disclose at that point?
Yes, definitely. Yes. So we have been so we would even do this right now. It's, as I said, just a question of the lawyers giving us the green lights, because we have been in discussion with them, repeated discussion for a few weeks now, just to get the final green light and then to start the open discussion about the matters. But we have absolutely no problem about that.
Sure. So give us some hints. What can you tell us, with regard to this discussion of token metrics, the tokenomics as they call it? What can you tell us that you're able to comment on?
Right. So we will not raise in the orders of valuation, will not be in the orders of billions of dollars, not even in the orders of hundreds of millions of dollars. It will be in the order of tens of millions, and for a very healthy amount of the tokens.
Okay.
Because we think this is really, really important in order to have a real network effect, to attract some really valuable people with which we want to partner, and then to also give the chance to some of the really valuable supporters from the community to to join and contribute to the Elrond ecosystem.
Well, let's talk about prospective partners. Now, you both of you gentlemen would know the different tiers of investors in terms of VCs out there. There's different qualities, let's say. Now, that's obviously a subjective thing, and that's up to everyone to interpret, but certainly there's a consensus out there that Andreessen, for example, has a good reputation. That is a subjective statement I'm willing to make. Now, your own opinion will be different, but my understanding is that you have had talks, given some research I've done in different Telegram groups and having just talks about them. What's your position with regard to Chris Dixon, with Andreessen? Where are you going with your conversations to try and secure investments?
Right. So we have been in conversation with some, as I said, some of the really interesting people here. I would rather not go and give out names.
But I did.
Really clear. But we do appreciate that there are different tiers of investors and the investment firms, and some of them are really focused on the one hand to invest money and have returns, but then also to provide value, the kind of value the founders need in startups to be able to either execute on their vision with respect to the product or help when where they need a scaling.
Sure. So Ben, are you saying that your focus is on trying to align with VCs that have a tech-driven long-term focus? Is that specifically what you're saying?
Right. So we have been in discussion both with tech VCs, conventional tech VCs that have a strong reputation in the field and really well-reputed blockchain VCs. But the important part for us has not been if they are a VC or a fund, but rather the quality we have perceived and seen as brought forth with different projects.
Right. Okay. Now let's talk about moving across to the crypto focus, because sometimes we see, even in the influencer space, that even in the secondary markets, for example, some people can have a huge influence in that realm, and for that reason they garner a lot of attention. Now, have you also considered the impacts of some of the more branded versions of VC that aren't necessarily focused on tech, but certainly have a brand to offer when we are still moving into the space of a tech-driven system?
Right. We have considered this. We have also been in discussion. So with respect to discussion, we are very open. The question is, at the end of the day, if the people really want to do good things and to help Elrond on its vision. We are here because this is our focus, to build a kind of open, scalable, and decentralized public blockchain that executes and then executes on this.
Okay.
And if the people are here to help us, then we're for that.
Right. Now, sorry to interrupt once again. Now, what I'm hearing in translation is long lockup. That's really what I'm hearing. Because people who speak like you, they don't want people to dump their token. So is it fair for me to comment now and openly state that I personally think that you're going to design your system so that people cannot immediately dump you?
Yes, so we will have some lockups. We will we are very carefully considering this just for incentives purposes and also to align the kind of things we say. So everything I'm saying here will not be just said, but we will put this in practice. It's not it's again different to what some of the projects are doing, but we are very confident that the kind of people that understand the value of Elrond will be here and will want to join.
Okay, now let's move across to actual application, utility, use case. How can we ensure that this is not just some sort of theoretical, whimsical idea and it can actually have application in the real world?
Sure. So I think there's two things we are focusing on right now. So in the blockchain space, there has been a really healthy discussion about the technology and what needs to be improved there. But I think there's two things one needs to solve in order to succeed with a kind of blockchain project. One of them is the technical part, where you solve the difficult problem you want. But then the other part is to have the distribution as widely as possible distributed and used for some particular purpose. And here we are focusing very much on two things. On the one hand, to have a really healthy discussion with startups that are trying to build something and need scalability as a solution for their application. And then on the other hand, we are focusing also on some important aspects that have not been clarified until this point. So I think the whole ecosystem is currently focusing to discover the killer app for the blockchain beyond what we have seen at this point. And we have certainly engaged not only with startups, but with really large enterprises that would want to explore adding the blockchain part, different pieces of what we are doing in their ecosystem, not as a solution that would solve everything, but as a kind of piece in their ecosystem in building what they want to build.
Okay.
And so,
but can you but because of the, obviously for time constraints, can you give me some clear examples though? Like we're talking about names. Give me some really clear examples for us to understand in the business context, in the real world.
Yeah, so we are focusing on the immediate and short term. We would focus on two things. Decentralized exchanges are a really core thing that can be built on Elrond, especially due to its design and scalability solution. And another thing is gaming. So we have been in discussion with a few people trying to build gaming either platforms or integrate blockchain solutions into their platforms, just to have the kind of incentivization and tokenization and all this factor built in, or games that require settlement, rapid settlement for different options they are processing.
It's interesting you say that, because a lot of experts I've spoken to, or many of them argue that gaming is one of the first and foremost industry applications that have a real use case example for blockchain, like tokenized economies rather, because obviously the affordance is given to immediate use case in that, already we've seen that the iterations of it working. So it is interesting that you are already talking to them. You can't tell me which one?
No, so again, we are at the stage where things are in discussion on several fronts, but we would only make announcement after things are really clered out, where we have a contract with
that
signature.
Company. Sure. I appreciate that. Now let's talk about your roadmap. Now we've talked about the very nascent stage of your prototype. You're really just building that out. But you argue that you're going to have your test nets very soon. You're going to move across next year early for your main nets. Talk us through your vision. What's planning to happen in Elrond?
Right. So we are focusing right now on experimenting and rapid iteration with respect to the prototype. We have made some tests and validated some of our core hypotheses, but are moving forward really fast and intend to have a first version of our testnet in about 1.5 months. And then the idea is to have, by the end of this year, a fully featured testnet, meaning that the first version will be a bit more complex to what we have right now, but still very at the inception stage. And then by the end of the year, we will add complexity increasingly, so that by the end of the year, we have all of the features we mentioned in the white paper.
Okay.
The idea is to have a kind of stress testing period after the fully featured testnet of maybe 2-3 months. And depending on how that goes, we will intend to have a mainnet end of Q1. Now, I must say that this is tentative, and especially when you are trying to build something as complex as what we intend to do, you need to stress out that this is tentative on the one hand, but on the other, that we are very, very focused and are trying to accelerate the pace and not slow down.
Right. Okay, so Adrian, I want to move across to you for a moment in reference to the sensitivities, because this relates to the GitHub. Now, how open source are you truly? Are you open source by any means at all, or are you in fact, because of appropriation concerns, entirely closed? What's the situation?
Yeah, right now our GitHub is private, but we intend to make it public, I think, with the release of our testnet.
Okay, so how can we trust that you can even do any of this stuff that you claim if we can't verify it or if code reviewers can't see it?
So I think there's two open things there. One of them is the very technical proof of concept we've released and is public there for anyone to verify. And
do you mean
on the other hand,
do you mean the theoretical presentation? Okay,
exactly.
but that's not
very
something that we can.
technical.
But that's not something that someone can tangibly evaluate from code. So, are you releasing your code to any code reviewer in a private context for media review?
Sure. So we are, as I said, on the one hand, we have released this technical paper. On the other hand, we have the prototype released and are going to present this to any kind of requests. So most of the investors that we have talked and the serious people we have talked, we have made a demo of this. We have also gone through the code, explained part. So this is upon request quite doable, and we actually encourage it.
I see.
Because we are here to keep the conversation going and to receive feedback on that side. The only thing why we have not made this public is that, as you may know, everyone in the space would really fast copy stuff and would come out.
But I ask you this because it's one thing for investors to get, especially early investors, to get access. And obviously, respectfully, you do need capital. I understand. But what I want to hear is that you understand the importance of the community having access to that information. And the only way you can do that is to give access to certain parties who are media agents who can review it with technical skill. Are you planning on doing that?
Yes, we have already done this with a few people, and we are planning and open to continuing doing this. We have also thought of doing this even with you as a demo of the prototype. But we are open. So
that'd be great. I'd love to do that. I will definitely call you back to have a look at that and show the community whenever you're ready. Now let's talk about your community, since we're alluding to that. Now, what kind of efforts are you making right now to engage in your community, to inform your community? Clearly you have Telegram, Twitter, Facebook, if it doesn't get shut down with their controls. What's the plan?
So we intend to keep posting really timely updates on everything that happens within Elrond, both with respect to the vision and plan and with how the execution goes in place. On the one hand, we also intend to implement a kind of ambassador program for really technical people that come from key parts of the world where we want to deliver Elrond as a solution. So we will plan and launch a few programs to engage with the community, both from an informational standpoint, so that they can be up to date with everything that happens, and so that they can engage and provide value and feedback, and even take and do efforts for to help Elrond succeed.
I see. Okay, now it's time to really roll up your sleeves, because this is where it gets really serious. I'm going to talk to you about some of your criticisms, some of the comments, and some of my own questions that I have. Now, one of them is, when I read through all of the different members of your team, immediately an alarm bell came off when I read a surname that was the same as yours, Ben. Let's talk about that. Are you related to anyone else in your team?
Yes, I have my brother in our team, and he is really focused on the technical side. A really technical guy, without which I would probably not have started things.
Okay, let's explore that a bit more. Now, one of the concerns I seriously have, and I'm hoping you can explain this, is that from the outset you explained you are an entrepreneur. Clearly that was transparent from the beginning of this interview. But you started creating your very own capital firm. I forget the name of it. Please tell us. What was it called?
Metachain Capital.
Right, and you did that with your brother. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay, exactly. So what I want to ask you very directly for the people is, how can we possibly trust you to lead out something highly technical when you, from the outset, were very much driven to build out something for a financial gain?
I think this is very important to clarify. So I first started in the space as part of the NEM core team. And then after some time of helping the NEM core team with things on the business, marketing, community side, and product side, I have moved forward and have started to replicate what I have done with NEM. So basically, what we have done with my brother is invest our own money to help other entrepreneurs and people in the space tackle the problems, solve some of their problems, and give them some advice based on what we have learned.
Sure, I appreciate that, Ben, but I just want to interrupt and explain once again. Now, the concerns of the community would be, the motivation behind this, because it seems from the outset, when you look at it from, very objective position, that quite simply you'd move, even in the references in the explanations in your own white paper and your website, yes, were involved with NEM, but you also explain very clearly that you were part of making NEM much more valuable, as a token. So clearly the premise was still to build out its performance. So is your focus, Ben, I'm asking you directly, is your intention in any way to make this something of a cash grab?
So our intention, as I think can be clearly seen, is to build a really, really serious project that tackles a really technical problem, which is scalability in this part. And you can judge and see this by the kind of people we are in conversation, the kind of people we are working with, both as advisors and inside the team, and also the kind of work that we have come forth with. You will see in the tech world many people either switching roles from entrepreneurs, becoming investors, and then from investors becoming entrepreneurs when they see a kind of idea where they can execute and have a vision.
Sure. Sorry to interrupt again, Ben, but so is it fair for you to respond and say that you perhaps don't need to be the most technologically savvy person in the room or even in the boardroom to lead something that's technologically revolutionary?
Yes. So you could say you don't need to be the most technical guy in the room. Yeah, definitely. So I think it's very important for us to have a clear vision and then to have different roles within the team. And I would very much appreciate the top people that I can work with to tackle and help us solve some of the problems we have.
Sure, I appreciate that. Now, a lot of CEOs in the traditional world, they are not the most, skilled in the boardroom. So there's no reason why you can't, and I don't mean to be offensive in being so direct, but we do have to ask these questions, and I appreciate your honesty. Now let's talk about your team.
Sure.
Now, in blockchain right now, every time we see a team that is outside of China or outside the Silicon Valley, immediately alarm bells go off. I have no idea why. Can you tell us why? Because there's a lot of discussion about you being a European team.
Right. So I think people generally try to reason in heuristics. So they would just search their memory and say, okay, have we had a kind of good example from that part of the world, from Eastern Europe, let's say? No, we have not seen anything. Have we seen anything in tech? Maybe, but in the blockchain space, not necessarily. So it's kind of understandable on the one side, but I think this is also an opportunity.
Right.
Because here is where the opportunity arises, where when you have a really technical, so a really good country like Romania, where you have a really high number of technical people, probably the highest number of per capita programmers in Europe, then you can really take some extremely bright minds and help build something that proves the world wrong.
Was that your objective, Ben? You sought after people like Adrian sitting beside you. Was that your as an entrepreneur? No doubt people would do that.
Yes.
So did you actively go and seek out these kind of skill sets?
Yes.
Is that true, Adrian? Adrian, can I ask you?
Yes.
Was that your experience? Did Ben go and scout you from wherever you were before to bring you across into the Elrond team?
Yeah, actually, I've met Lucian while I was working in Germany,
And
and
is
that's
that
when
Ben's brother?
yeah,
Right,
exactly,
right.
and that's when the proposal came.
Okay, okay. So that's verified from the source. Thank you. Sorry, keep going on, Ben.
Yes, so the whole idea for us is not to have one guy who would be able to build this, as this is clearly unfeasible,
Hmm.
but rather to have a team of people who are very skilled and very determined, each in his own area of expertise, that together as a group can move mountains.
Hmm.
This is the whole idea of a startup. It's not that one guy can do everything. Not even Elon Musk can by his own do this kind of stuff, but
Sure.
rather to have a group of people who are really talented and are specialized in different fields, and they can really build together something.
Okay. My last question to you is this then. Because we're still at the very
Sure.
beginnings of not only your project, but let's be real, for the majority of projects, they're all very much premised on speculation. How can we know for sure, even with all the explanations that you provided today, that you can make it? How can we know that your theoretical idea, with all your experiments right now, can make it into the real world?
I think the best thing on this area is to look at past history. So, on the one hand, whenever you try to judge someone, you can not only judge his ability, but also you want to look at the past history. If the guy has been part of some other project that have tried to implement it, at least he has some experience in what he's talking about. Then, on the other hand, you really want to judge the team and see if they are skilled, if they know stuff. And then, most important, I think you can, if the people understand the technical aspects, can look both at the proof of concept and the prototype and at our behavior, the kind of things we have focused on and we are continually focusing on and trying to build. So
Sure.
I think things should be really clear on that front.
Thank you. Now, Adrian, what are your thoughts? Because one of the things I wanted to ask you directly is my concern, given that Ben is an entrepreneur, his brother is involved. I wanted to know from you and all of the other 5 approximate members of the team whether you were just brought in to look good. Are you good? Are you brought in to look like you're all technical when in fact we're talking about 2 brothers, or are you actually representing something that's really deeply valuable?
Yeah, I would go for the second option. Yes, of course, we have gathered here in order to build something that goes on the global scale, not just stay here in a small room in Romania. This was actually the incentive for us. We all wanted to take part in such a project. So yeah, this is what motivates us.
Okay, now what about academic review? And this is for you, Adrian, because if it is true that Elrond is of the high academic standing that you profess to have, particularly from your standpoint, have you had anyone of any outstanding position review your quality and then comment on that in any academic setting?
We've had discussions, of course, with as Ben also mentioned, with some people from OmniLedger, and yeah, we are in discussions with other people.
But are they publicly commenting on your value? Are they positively responding to your ideas in their review?
Yes. So they have been. We have first engaged them because most of these people are surrounded by receive hundreds of emails, hundreds of requests just to look on stuff. But we have discussed with some of the top people in the field, even from some of the projects that are competing against us, just to do a kind of peer review and try to see where the holes are and give feedback.
Absolutely.
And the feedback has been quite positive, and we will also have some really public remarks from some of these people when the time is right. These things usually take time, but we intend to also submit the paper to some peer-reviewed journals and some conferences. So things should be put in place pretty soon.
That's interesting that you say that you're going to submit them to some peer review, because by doing that, that makes it really genuinely professional. Now, I do want to finish off and allow you the very last opportunity to make a comment to the community. You know, obviously, we've learned a great deal, and I appreciate your time today. What would you both like to say on behalf of Elrond to the community as a closing statement? Let's start with you, Adrian, and then we'll finish off with the CEO.
Yeah, we are here. We are doing our best to deliver a working product, and we appreciate all the support from the community. And we are actually waiting for them to engage us in interesting questions about our model or come up with suggestions. We're always open to suggestions and discussions on the technical fronts.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Adrian.
Yeah, sure. And I would say that Elrond has advanced pretty much from what we proposed initially and is continually changing, and people will see sooner or later that we are really building something that will likely be the next major wave in blockchain technology.
Right, well, you've heard it from the CEO, you've also heard it from one of the lead technicians of Elrond. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being here today to explain all of the hard questions. It has been an absolute grilling, I know that, but we do need to go there to understand it better. Once again, this is the highly scalable public blockchain. It's all about looking at it, revolutionizing how you perceive sharding. State sharding, dynamic sharding, we're looking at transactional sharding in a very new light, and it's all about adaptive state sharding. Thank you very much once again. I look forward to speaking with you further in the future and also following you as you evolve into hopefully a real business for the future. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Brad. It was a pleasure to have this discussion with you.
You're welcome.